that time to get introspective, to explore, what is beyond the veil. And I think that is not only connects to death and dying and all of these themes that kind of come up through Halloween and that sort of thing, but it's also like, in my point of view, that time where you really explore what is behind the veil within yourself. Hello and welcome to Fuck Yeah, the podcast where we say fuck yeah to Eclipse season. I am one of your hosts, Sarah, and I am joined by my having a good hair day co-host, Robin. The hair's looking good.
You know why it's looking good?
Why?
Because of my fuck yeah.
Oh.
because of the fuck yeah I have, because I went out last night and I feel like when I do my hair up, then the next day it looks especially good.
Oh,
you know?
I'm the exact opposite.
Oh, really?
My hair lasts one day and one day only, and the next day it's trash.
Yeah, I think maybe it has to do with because we have different kind of hair goals. Like I'm looking for big and messy, and it just gets bigger and messier. Nice. I'm also using that powder stuff. Like, so the more it moves and stays there, the bigger your hair gets. It's like, it's weird.
Is it like dry shampoo or is it a setting?
It's this like, I don't even know what type of product it is, but it's like basically like a hair floofing. So it's like a silica that just makes your hair stand up without being gunky or wet or crispy. And so the more
you put it
I
at your
fluff
roots,
my hair.
Right?
Yeah, so I'll like part my hair in all these different spots and sprinkle it in, and then just floof at the roots, and it keeps activating as long as you have it, and then I'll add like layers to it, and then by the time I wash my hair, it's like chaos, but it's punk rock,
Yeah, I love it. It looks great today.
Thank you.
So what did you do last night?
So our compatriot Elliot and I went out to the Circa opening ceremonies. So all this month, Circa, or the One Institute that does the Circa Festival, is all month having, I guess, like different exhibitions and events all around queer history and storytelling. So the One Institute was founded in 1952 and is the oldest active LGBTQ plus organization in the country, dedicated to telling queer history and stories through education, arts, and social justice programs. And we are a part of the festivities this year. And it was so nice to go out. And it was like, a classic LA. It was at the LGBTQ Center. And it's just an open, airy space with, open bar and some food and everything. But it was just being around all of these unique queer people that are making shit happen in Los Angeles. Is so exciting. It made me feel like I'm doing the right stuff, that I'm in the right place. Like when you're looking around and you're proud to be included, I'm just like, and I feel like I should be a part of it also. It's not like I'm getting imposter syndrome, but I'm also just like, and I get a little bit shocked. Like there's a couple people that kind of fangirled a little bit over me. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just like a great feeling like I'm doing the right stuff and I'm in the right place with the right people, and just so much, just visually, just beautiful, unique outfits, so much fashion going on, and enjoyment of fashion in this way that does not have to do at all with fitting into certain requirements by society. And it's just fun to see what people come up with when they're not constrained by these ridiculous rules that we all grew up with.
I
So
hadn't known that the One Institute was the oldest LGBTQ org in the country. That's really cool.
well, it said
I
the
was,
oldest active one. So I think
yeah.
there must be older ones that are no longer active.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, that's the big struggle, right? Is how do you
Right.
continue to make it through all of the social change, all of the funding changes? You know, I just had our SECUS board meeting on Friday, the sex ed organization that I'm a part of that is 60 years old. And it's
Wow.
just like in my 5 years with the organization, just seeing how much the funding changes, and particularly in the last 2 years, you know, you have foundations that have long supported sex education and understood how sex education and all of these other social issues are intertwined. But with Roe v. Wade getting overturned, all of the funding now is going to reproductive justice, as it should. But it gives you this sense of, you know, really this Christian agenda of creating chaos does create so much instability for these organizations, because suddenly all these funding streams have had to completely shift focus over
Yeah.
to abortion access, like legal funds, all of these sorts of things. And so for an organization to last for decades
Right.
is really a Herculean feat.
Yeah, because there's that, and then there's also the direct attacks on things like sex education or institutes that are fighting for LGBTQ rights, right? But then
Yes.
there's also just keeping the band together,
Yeah.
and having generation after generation continue to, hold the mantle. What's the word? Like, I can't-
Well, I think it's kind of like a line on the same issues, and, you know, the passing on of especially community organizations intergenerationally is really difficult, because the areas of focus that everyone holds really near and dear are not always in alignment, and the
right.
strategies aren't always in alignment. You know, when you're thinking about like an older group of organizers versus a younger group of organizers. And so
Right.
to maintain that kind of consistency, not consistency in approach, but longevity for an organization is just, it's really, really hard. So I actually didn't know that about the One Archives, and I'm super excited about our event that we're doing. I know we've mentioned it at least once or twice on the pod, but it's going to be on October 19th. It's a Saturday. Robin and I both have childcare, which is very exciting. We're having a panel discussion at the Eagle LA in collaboration with Cruise LA. We're going to be talking about the intersections of sex worker activism and queer liberation. So we're super excited about this. We have Vanessa Carlisle joining us. We have Miss Barbecue. Swap LA is going to be there, and SHEP. It's essentially their sexual health education resource center. And there's art.
Portraits of sex workers and queer activists.
Yeah.
It's going to be really
And then,
great.
of course, it's going to be amazing music and go-go dancers and all the things. So you can come to the event on October 19th at 4 p.m. But it is better if you go to circafestival.org and find our event and sign up there, because we are part of the larger festival, and they like to have a sense of, you know, which programs are being attended and folks have interest in. So it really does help us, and it helps the One Archive if you sign up through their site for your tickets.
Yeah.
They're still free, but go check out circafestival.org. There's lots of other programming happening this month too.
Yeah, so much exciting stuff. Almost every single day, there's multiple things going on every day. And
Yeah.
there's also an ability to donate. And if you do donate, a portion of that does go to the event organizers and helps us pay the panelists and the printing fees and our ASL interpreter and things like that. So anything around that is really appreciated, specifically if you donate through our portal on the website, and we'll link that in our show notes.
Yeah. Speaking of ASL interpreters, I have a fuck yeah, because I literally just got back right before we recorded from going down to Ohana Fest in Dana Point. It's a music festival. It's never really come across my radar because
I've never heard of it.
It's run by Eddie Vedder. So Pearl Jam often headlines, and not being, the kind of core Pearl Jam demographic. There's not always bands that I want to see there.
Right.
But this year, the Breeders were there. So, of course, Andrea is like always trying to see the Breeders whenever we can. And Alanis Morissette went on last night before Pearl Jam. And the reason ASL interpreters was the bridge for me is that they had ASL at each of the stages. And I just got to tell you, whenever there's an ASL interpreter, it's just where my eye goes, because it is so fun to see music interpreted through the through sign language. And so we had a blast. And I have to tell you, seeing Alanis Morissette perform again was so cathartic for me. I saw her at Lilith Fair as a teenager.
Wow.
And I still know all the words to her songs. It still feels good to scream them in a crowd. And I got flooded with all these memories of, I don't think I realized how much stress I was under as a teenager. And I used to have a really hard time sleeping. And so as soon as I got a car, I would sneak out of the house in the middle of the night and drive my car down to the beach.
Wow.
Just drive to the beach and back, just blasting music. I'm sure at some point I was smoking cigarettes too, doing it. And Alanis was definitely one of the CDs, or two of the CDs, that I had in my car at the time. Yeah. And I would just sing along, release all my stress, quietly sneak back into bed. And that music was so important to me when I was younger.
Yeah, the 90s were so great for women musicians expressing anger.
Well, I love that you say that, because I just saw an interview of her where the interviewer asked her, what do you think is the most important emotion for women? And she said anger.
Yeah.
And that made me think of because we had said that, it's spooky season. October is here. Like, we really wanted to talk about the shadow today.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was lost on me in my teen. Like, I don't think I was being thoughtful about being in touch with that feeling, right? But when I heard it recently, I was like, gosh, that might be the feeling I am the least in touch with, the emotion. Like, I think it feels to me like when it comes up, it's a little out of control, and it's kind of messy, and it's uncomfortable for me to express anger or sit in anger. And so I think I am often trying to transmute those feelings into something else.
Right. Because I think we're not allowed to. Socially, I think, feminine people are not socialized to ever express anger. Because it's like, if we are in a hierarchical system and women are low on there, you don't get, as a subservient person, you don't get to express that anger. Or if you are angry, it's going to be used against you as though it's something that it's like so uncouth. It's not cutesy and not demure, to be angry. And that's why in the 90s was so messy and so just laying it all out, kind of so hyper focused on being real and not being a poser and like all of this stuff. And it became more about like with the grunge and Riot Girls. And I think Alanis Morissette was one of the key figures in pop music to hit that anger button on the head of like, yeah, you don't have to just sit back and let all of this shit happen to you that is like systematically, endowed.
Well, and it's interesting because I think like seeing Pearl Jam, which, I've said it's not really my jam, but we did stick around for most of that set last night and like realizing that like shift that was happening in music where, Andrea was pointing this out to me of like, you go from Guns N' Roses and this like kind of hardcore man rock rage to the Kurt Cobains and the Eddie Vedders who were actually writing about their feelings. And so you've got rockers, male rockers singing about their feelings, and you've got female rockers singing about their rage.
Right.
And it's kind of for the first time sort of coming to the surface. And I was standing around and noticing all of the men of a certain age in that audience. And some light bulbs went off for me because I was like, I'm approaching the end of my coaching program, and we had a weekend dedicated a couple weeks ago to codependency.
Ugh.
And in that we were really like a lot of the exercises were about diving into the shadow, because codependency is sort of the shadow side of connection and really how most of us are conditioned to be in relationship. Like that's highly encouraged in our society because the nuclear family, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things, so people, as we're doing exercises, people bring their stuff. And one clinician in the group was asking about, on a personal level, like this feeling of entitlement that her husband has to her sexuality and to like where she wants to connect through conversation, through intimacy, through sensuality. And he's really pushing this like, but I need to be having sex and I need to be having it regularly. And the instructors, who were both depth psychologists, were bringing up that masculine expression of feelings is allowed in our culture through anger and through sex.
Ugh, yep.
So as I'm watching like Eddie Vedder sing his heart out on stage and all of these men, I mean, there were a lot of women too of a certain age, but like all of these men are just feeling it. And I'm like, oh, but music is also this space where we get to dive into those feelings that are kind of messy. And even if you're not comfortable talking about them, he's up there singing about that thing that you also feel. And so it's kind of like there was this generation of rock lovers who got this third way of processing their feelings, like anger, sex, and Pearl Jam or like, Nirvana or whatever. And I think, certainly I can attest to how much, Alanis Morissette singing about her anger and her voice and her holding the space for a complex female heroine was really formative for me as I was approaching adulthood.
Yeah. No, her anger, it made me feel more comfortable with my own in a lot of ways. Or like Courtney Love or all of the Riot Girl bands and everything. Even the other day, I was listening like a cover of I'm Just a Girl. The No Doubt song came on, and they were singing it in this other way that I was like in not a cutesy way that she kind of sang it. And I was just like, wow, this song is ripping me up right now. Yeah. I don't know that much. I was into Pearl Jam when I was a teenager. It was like one of the major bands, but it was really Nirvana was the big thing for me. And there's been a lot of stuff that I've seen on TikTok lately around Kurt Cobain's gender expression and general queerness that
Yep.
when it gets pointed out in certain ways, I'm like, ooh, girl. Like, I wonder how Kurt would express himself today, where he
Yeah.
like a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, we might be getting a totally different thing.
Well, have you heard of the band Idols?
No, maybe I know their song.
They're a British punk rock band. I had never heard them, but they have the #1 album in the UK right now. They came on right before Alanis, and they are a high adrenaline performance group. Like, I was like, wow, if I had heard this on Spotify, I would not have connected with this music, but watching them perform was just, I mean, completely engaging. I don't know another word for it. And they're like getting people to like mosh pit, but in the lead singer's using all this language of like love and cooperation, and that like fascism and extreme wealth is what has created all of the divide. And then the guitar player is in a full dress. The bassist is clearly queer. His instrument is just like queer coded as much as like he's like standing up there being like, I'm a fag, like just totally. I was like, wow, this is so cool to see this kind of high adrenaline hyper masculinity, but being channeled in a way that is really disruptive to kind of traditional masculine tropes and representation.
Yeah.
It seems like they're definitely the Idols could not exist without Nirvana having existed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's all stepping stones. It all leads down. We have to appreciate our elders. It all reminds me, just the other night on movie night in my house is Friday night, and Inside Out 2 finally came out on Disney Plus. And so I watched it with the boys, and I was a little checked out at first. I wasn't hard relating.
Really?
I was a little checked out at first. And but then like once anxiety shows up and it really gets into it. I mean, when she's having the panic attack in that movie, I was having so much trouble not just like openly weeping. And I was telling the boys what I was going through. I was like, you guys, this is really intense. And then, I only recently realized I had panic attacks because I had one in front of my therapist, and she told me that it was a panic attack. And I was like, that old thing? Like, I've been having this my whole life and I had no idea, So I was like, that's just me freaking out. That's a freak out, not a panic attack. So to watch it happen and to see how it takes over and just starts spinning out, to see the internal way, just the way they structure everything and make it really simple. I think it's an excellent way just to describe how you emotionally mature over time as well. Like this idea of like when you're a kid that you're putting away the bad stuff and you're just kind of keeping all this good stuff. You're like, I'm a good person and I'm a good friend and I'm going to do this and my parents are proud of me and stuff like that. Not that my kids, and I'm sure your kid as well, all kids are having a lot of internal struggles going on, but childhood's kind of presented in that way. It's like we're always like positive. At least I guess with today's parenting, I don't know.
Well, then things are very good and bad. Like there is that, there's also that thing of the early childhood brain has to categorize things.
Right. Yeah. And it's simplistic.
So like that's why it can be so problematic for kids who get labeled as quote unquote bad.
Right.
Because it really takes hold.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's one or the other. It's good or it's bad.
Yeah. And then showing how these memories and things that happen to us throughout our life form into belief systems about ourselves. That was super powerful because I've just started learning about that and how it's affecting my self-esteem and myself and all this stuff. And then how you can push away certain things that you don't want to be true. And that if you don't eventually integrate those things into the whole person that you are, that you do good things. You can be a good friend. You can also fuck up, and you can be selfish sometimes, and you can be forgetful and unthoughtful, and all of these things. It makes up the whole person. And we've talked about this before of like when you have unintegrated parts of yourself, that's like the shame machine. And then you start judging other people for that thing. Like I feel like a lot of the gender shit that we have in this, or gender aggression around, how would I say this? A lot of the conflict we have in our culture right now around gender expression and wanting people to fall in line, I think has a lot to do with people not being able to accept that they have feminine or masculine parts of themselves. And so then they want to enforce that rule with other people because they feel shame about it. And they showed that really nicely about how when she starts feeling bad about her performance, she starts in hockey, she starts overcompensating. And you see that like frantic side of someone who is insecure, how they lash out, and then you see it all through our society. I mean, it's like it's the world that like, I think Trump lives in, for example, of like, he's just so full of shame about everything. Like his idea of self is so fragile and needs to be constantly bragged about and defended in this way that's just circus level ridiculous.
Yeah, he's an interesting shadow archetype in a lot of ways. Not that I want to like, break that down to like waste our breath on that. But for sure, he is the embodiment of toxic masculinity when there is no space given for other parts of yourself to be integrated.
Yeah.
For folks who haven't seen Inside Out 2, essentially what happens is like these new, more complex emotions enter into like controlling the board of Riley, the main character's brain. And it's things like embarrassment, anxiety, ennui.
Ennui was so great.
I loved ennui. But there's like, they've been categorizing like core memories, like, oh, we keep these. And then like there are ones that just go down the chute. And essentially they're like sent to the very back of the brain. And I love that placement and that like journey that they have to go on into the very back of the brain. Because like whenever I have done shadow work, like I think I've mentioned Debbie Ford. She was, she's no longer with us, but she was a big shadow work expert. One of her books is called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And some of her exercises, I think maybe I've talked about on the podcast before, but it's like a lot of either you're like going really deep into the depths, like you're imagining that you're going into like your basement, like you're going to the dank, dark, forgotten places inside yourself. So I loved that they actually illustrated that in the movie, because it is so relatable, that like deep place within that you really don't want to visit.
Yeah.
To explore these sides of yourself that you're like, nope, that's not me. Because if that were me, that would mean I'm bad.
Well, and I would
mean
say
I'm unlovable.
Exactly. And that I've had 3 major relationships as I've been going through my own healing process that have crumbled because, from my point of view at least, I'm sure they have very different points of view, but because I've had some feedback on how I'm being treated within the relationship, and because I believe the feedback hits them in a spot where they cannot, it brings up the feelings, I think, that they're a bad person because I'm upset about something that they've done. And so it never actually ever gets addressed and always gets pushed aside or counterattacked or all of these things. And the relationships have crumbled because I can't have a voice in relationship with them because their need to be basically perfect or have, I don't know, not upset anybody is so great.
Is codependency though, too.
Ah, I know.
I mean, that's their fragility, right? Of like
Right.
not being able to be like, okay, we're going to sit in the complexity of this and try to make it out of the woods together. But that is an illustration of codependency when you need the other person to be okay in order to be okay. So like one of the things about disentangling, I mean, I'm so like in the codependent stuff right now. I think I maybe mentioned this a couple weeks ago that because I have so erred on the codependent side of like relationship formation. I think that really my relationship with Andrea is one of the first where I feel a sense of independence. I feel a sense of like safety for her to be independent, and yet it still pops up all the time, right? The insecurities from my codependent orientation. But when you're disentangling from codependent relationship formation, you have to be able to go, okay, this is how this person feels.
Yeah.
And like your feelings are over there. And my feelings can still be true. And my intentions can still be good.
That's right.
And I can have an impact on you that creates pain and anger and discomfort and all these things. And we can like trust each other enough that we can work through it.
Right. Yeah. But you have to be able to hold both things at once. And if you can only hold one of them, if only one point of view can be true, which is that my intentions are good, therefore I am good.
Yes.
You know, then
simplistic.
there's nothing to work with there. Yeah. And, but Inside Out 2 really shows how that whole mechanism can work because it's really complicated sounding, and they put it into this way that even children, I think, can understand. I think it's beneficial for like anybody to see, but especially I love that it's out there for kids to hopefully be able to understand themselves. And they did like such a great example with how she gets jealous and how she gets, you know, like all of these emotions that we say are bad come up always out of like a good place, actually. You know, and it's because we're, I don't know, like we can't accept that we're getting nervous or that we feel inferior, or I don't know. What do you think? You know,
they leverage like our position being inside the hero's head.
Yeah.
Really successfully to break down like the behavior on the outside is not necessarily indicative of what's happening internally.
Yeah.
And so I saw it in the theaters with Ruby and Andrea, and we all loved it. And so your point of like, it's really for everyone. I think it's also for adults with no kids in their life in the sense that it was not in the zeitgeist when we were young. This idea of like integrating your wholeness. I mean, maybe some people, I don't know, maybe there's some unicorns out there who like got this and how they were parented. But I think it is really healing for an adult to see like, oh, yeah, my anxiety is there actually to try to protect me. I have this great hope that things are going to turn out okay. And here's anxiety working overtime on my behalf, running 1,000,002 scenarios of everything that can go wrong, because like deeply inside, I want things to go well.
Yep.
Like I just thought that was a really nice, the fact that anxiety was not the villain of the story.
Yeah. There's no villains of the story. Anger is not the villain. Ennui isn't the villain. Ennui steps up like when you need some blasé, like teenager attitude, which we all, it comes in handy at times, you know. It's really great. But what's this? I'm like dying to know about this shadow stuff that you're doing, because all of this, I'm just so into it right now of like getting deep, because even though it's so hard to emotionally integrate parts of ourselves, it's also like I literally feel fuller in my body as I go along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like
Yeah.
more of a whole person because of what I've been able to integrate. And I know I have so much more work to do. And anytime like shadow stuff comes up, I just find it so interesting. But kind of like in the way that Halloween's interesting also. It's like you don't really want to like have murder in your life, but it's like fun and spooky in October.
Well, we're in the season of the shadow right now in general. You know, summer is that very like outward facing, you're kind of like deeply in your sun sign self, right? Like
Leo
showing
shit.
off to the world that side of you that is the side that you put out into the social space. And then as we go into fall and winter, it's that time to get introspective, to explore, you know, what is beyond the veil. And I think that that is not only connects to death and dying and all of these themes that kind of come up through Halloween and that sort of thing, but it's also like, in my point of view, that time where you really explore what is behind the veil within yourself. And then we're in eclipse season.
Yeah, what the hell's going on, Sarah, with eclipses?
Oh my God, I don't like the thing is I don't even know where to start because like I have like some cool shadow work exercises that we could talk about, but probably we should talk about the eclipses that are happening right now. So actually I'm going to talk about the one that is the most impactful for me, even though we're kind of like right in the middle of it. On September 17th, we went into a series of eclipses that are on the Pisces Virgo axis. And so whenever you're kind of in this space of like Pisces and Virgo are opposite on the chart, but they're also both very connected to healing. So Pisces is emotional healing, and Virgo is more centered on physical healing.
Okay.
But when I started looking into this, so this is like a 2.5 year cycle of eclipses that happen roughly every 9 years.
Okay.
Okay. The last time these eclipses started, so you can think back on what was happening in your life during these times to consider the themes that are going to come up now.
Okay.
And also kind of what the continuation of the work is that you have to do. Now, here's a thing that I think is really interesting because you may potentially be in a very similar eclipse season that I was in 9 years ago, because I'm going to share some things that when I saw this, I was absolutely shocked.
Yeah.
The synchronicity of these eclipses. So they started March 20th, 2015.
Okay. Trying to take myself back.
Until February 26th, 2017.
And that's your birthday.
There were 6 of them during that time. Do you want to know
Okay.
what was happening to me at this time?
Yes.
On March 20th, 2015, I was very pregnant and I had a ceremony with my ex at our house. We did a commitment hand fasting ceremony on March 20th, 2015.
Is that the one that I was at, or is that the
Yes.
other one?
Yes.
We were together.
On February
way.
26th, 2017,
Yeah.
my child was, like a year and 9 months, and it was my birthday, and I was on the beach with friends, and my co-parent was screaming at me on the beach. But because we had enough distance between us and the other people that were with us, like people could see us, but nobody could hear what was happening. And I realized in that moment on that day that I could not stay in that relationship.
Wow.
Because I was surrounded by people, but
Yeah.
no one could see the
What a metaphor.
conflict that was happening. And I was like, oh no.
That's like a real-time metaphor
shit.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like right in front of you. Like, look at this symbolism. Oof. That's intense.
So I was really curious when I started looking into this. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so this eclipse season, like, what is that about? And I think the thing that I came to is that the birth of Ruby was really the catalyst for me to reparent and do, like, I had always wanted to have a kid. Like, I was so, like, this was the one thing I always knew I wanted to do, is be a mom.
Yeah.
And I think that some of that motivation was coming from a really an internal voice that was saying, hey, there are some things here. There's a child here that needs some care. And I was really ready to give that care. But I believed I had to do it to like an external person, right?
Right. Yeah.
And having Ruby forced all of these issues of that care that I had not considered that I needed on my healing journey. And it was so rough. Like, I just remember in the thick of like the toddler years and all that stuff, just being like, oh my God, why didn't I do any of this work before having a kid?
Right?
It's so much harder to do it for a kid and for yourself at the same time. But that's how it was meant to happen on my path, right?
Yeah.
So I'm super curious. I have no idea like what the continuation of this theme is, but I think possibly for me, it might connect to like getting to a place where I'm actually finally ready to share all of these tools and like a lot of the healing gifts that I've received through my own journey out in the world. Like, this is the next thing that I really want to birth. So I'm excited about this particular series of eclipses to get really right with my stuff so that I'm in as best of a place as I can to like share my healing tools with the world.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, you've basically through this like past 9 years become, you know, not that you're like a therapist or anything, but a lot of this healing stuff you've become so well informed on because of your own journey that, and now you're taking all of these courses and everything around the embodiment and stuff. So I feel like you're ready to start sharing it. And you are. I mean, that's part of the podcast, I think, also, is like us being ready to start sharing some of this stuff. So explain the cycle to me, though. I know it goes like, so it's a 9-year cycle before they start repeating again. Is that it?
Before they start, yeah. I mean, and it varies a little, right? Like when astrological alignments come up, it's not always exact to the same number of years. But March 2015 to February 2017, if there is something in that time that was pretty significant for you, it is likely, it's the same concept as Saturn's return, right? Like that draw that you start having when Saturn is coming back to that place in your chart. It's like, oh, are you on your destiny's path? So eclipses are this time where this isn't necessarily a time that you're doing a lot of manifestation. It's kind of like when a planet is going retrograde. Okay. You're thinking about, okay, what's underneath the surface? So it could relate to where Virgo or Pisces land in your chart. Like those are the themes that you're working on. It could relate to things that were happening around this time. So what are some of the things that are unresolved potentially from this time? Or what are the threads that you see that are coming up again? Essentially, when something comes up from the shadow, like the dark side of the planet, or when a planet is moving backwards. So like eclipses are, you know, we are blocking out the sun, the light during an eclipse. So what information is this thing revealing to you in the dark that is good information for you to have as you continue on your journey?
Oh, Sarah. So tell me the dates one more time.
March 2015 to February 2017.
2017. So my mom died during that period.
I was thinking that's what
it
was happening.
Was it I think it was 2000. It was February 2018 though that my stepdad died. But I think it was, I remember thinking like my mom was so in charge, you know, even if she had doubt, she wouldn't have shown it, you know, and she didn't seem to have that much self-doubt. She knew shit and she just went about and did it. And, I remember thinking like when I was losing her, like the fuck am I going to do? Like, I'm going to be like the fucking matriarchy? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm totally incapable. Now. Yeah. I don't have anyone to like go to advice for and stuff. And, sorry, I'm trying to keep it. I have a puppy. If you're on Patreon, you can see the puppy. That'll be my fuck next time.
It's funny as you're talking and that you grabbed her, your new little pup, because
she
it did
make
me think of, okay, well, maybe she's tapping into the energy, because I was like, yeah, and look at you now, like bringing a really loving creature into your space that like you have to give care to.
Yeah.
But it is this like very reciprocal, like Robin 9 years ago would have never considered having a dog.
No, it'd be too much.
And now it feels like it's really for you. Like your heart is ready for that kind of animal love.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And it's a totally different kind of caregiving.
Yeah, no, and we eye gaze and stuff, and it's great.
Oh.
But I do, if I was going to put meaning onto that 9-year cycle compared to that time last year, she's like little paws on knees. Let me up. Okay, God. That I think that I have definitely only in the past couple of days started coming into this. I think I have like a warrior inside of me. I'm going to fight for the things that I believe in. I'm going to fight for the kind of life that I want. And I know what I want. And I don't know exactly how to get it. I don't know exactly how to do it, but I know I have a lot of resources in my community and a lot of love in my community. And I'm planning on asking for help for once. And I'm going to do it over and over again, not just one time. And so I'm feeling a lot more empowered just since like yesterday. So something's like shifting in me where even like the marijuana stuff, like I've been going back and forth with that. And I realized recently that I only end up talking about weed and my relationship to it when I quit weed. But I did, quote unquote, relapse and got a little lost in it again. But the past few days, I've been feeling like I understand the reason why I do it. Like I was really trying to feel into why I reach for weed so often. And when I think about not having it, this feeling in my chest of fear, a feeling like I can't do it on my own, you know? And so I reach for the weed because somewhere inside of me, I feel like it's going to help. And sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. And a good portion of the time it makes it worse, you know? So, and I'm realizing like, okay, I think this is to look into the shadow side of it. This is an abandonment issue. I feel like incapable of being able to do things on my own, and that I don't have resources outside of like substances, when actually I have an enormous amount of like people resources and love and care resources that I'm not calling upon because I was trained not to, basically, you know, or like this codependency, whatever angle of codependency I use, I'm the one that gives support. I'm not the one that takes support.
It also feels to me like you're dealing with some dissociation, like when your stuff And I think that this is true for a lot of people. When your stuff comes knocking on the door,
Right.
when it's someone else's stuff, like literally you are giving daily care to your mother who is in the process of dying.
Right.
You're like, I can show up for this job.
Yeah.
And then when your stuff comes knocking on the door,
Yeah.
you're like, how do I get as far away from this as possible? And I think
100.
that like, I have spent so many years in like turmoil around my relationship to alcohol, where I go like, oh gosh, okay, there's all this addiction stuff in my family. Like, oh, I can't believe and like judging myself and shaming myself. And like, how can you drink knowing like the propensity to like not be able to be in control with it, and having had periods of time where I'm really out of control with it. Right. And then I think the thing that shifted for me, and I don't always manage to do this, but if I'm like more times than not consuming a substance because it allows me to show up more fully in a present and fun and lighthearted way, I'm going to be okay with that. If I'm like turning to the substance because I can't deal with my life, then I want to try something else first, like taking a walk, getting on the treadmill, turning on some loud music. Like I was watching Alanis on set last night, like fucking flipping her hair around. And I'm like, why do I not turn music on really loud and like fucking spin around like a banshee and flip my hair around?
Yep. 100%.
I need to do that.
I think that's a really great thing. I think it would be really great to have like a flow chart of, if this, yes or no, is it this or is it this? Like, are you very upset right now and want to be less upset? Maybe don't have weed. Like, are you out with friends and it just seems like a lighthearted, fun thing to do, you know, to like amplify something? Great. Are you smoking weed to get you in the mood to have sex when you don't want to? You know? Oof.
Yeah.
You know, it's like maybe that's not the time. You know?
Yes.
It's so, and that's like the shit that I think that it's really smart, because I do definitely use it as dissociation. And I think that's the help that I'm looking for, because I'm only now realizing in the past couple of years, a master dissociator. And like, I've recently been noticing myself doing it at times that I never even noticed that I'm doing it. You know, like I can like check in and out, you know? And
I think
don't want to do it.
dissociation is a bit of a shadow tendency.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Like-
way to escape something you
Yeah.
can't escape.
Yeah, like it's masking whatever the underside is of the thing. Like, and I think that
Yes,
also
it's a mask.
dissociation is absolutely like survival, and we live in a time where I mean, we just need to check out sometimes. So like,
Right.
I'm not trying to shame it. I just
No.
think that it's that thing that comes up when actually the underbelly of the thing is so overwhelming. It's like, I just can't even look at that.
And I need to come into the space of realizing that in the past, I developed the habit or the coping mechanism of dissociating because I was trapped. I was not able to get out of the situations I was in, and I needed to check out because it was too much.
Yeah.
But now I have lots of ways to control my environment, control who's in my environment, you know, and what I was doing was continuing to dissociate and go towards comfortable relationships that are comfortable only because I've experienced them in the past. And now it's like, I'm trying to come more online, be more present, and then actually take action towards making my life better rather than needing to escape it through marijuana and other activities that do not benefit me. So, growing up's hard to do.
Yeah, seriously. I wonder if there's anything for you here, because we're about to go into another eclipse on Wednesday, October 2nd,
Okay.
which I think is when this episode is going to air. Okay. So this eclipse, it's a solar eclipse in Libra. This
Okay.
is the second of two Aries Libra eclipses that have happened in the last year. So the last one was April 2023.
April 2023.
So
Okay.
storylines that were prevalent at that time, or perhaps
Yeah.
if you look at where Aries Libra is in your chart, you can kind of see like, ooh, maybe there's a cycle that's closing out, or that's been really loud during this period of time from April to October. And this Libra is like really about fairness, objectivity. It's an air sign. So, it's a lot about like, it's really connected to how you think about your
Okay.
place in the world and, the world in general. And so some of the themes that come up with this is like, compromise.
Oof.
Like,
Uh-huh.
how can I assert it? I mean, this is like a good codependent, like a good time to be kind of working with codependent things. Like, where can I stand in my truth, but also make compromise for the greater good?
Right.
Like, where is it comfortable for me to be civil, that doesn't send me really out of my place of strong grounding? Do I trust my beliefs, my opinions? Like, what are my values about? Do I feel like my voice has power?
Right.
These are some of the things that are getting stirred up, I think, with this eclipse.
It's so interesting because where I've been going through a very long, involved breakup process. And where
Yeah.
we're at right now, what we're moving into is actual, we're not dealing with the emotional part anymore. And there's been a lot of grieving around all of that. And now it's all about, all right, how are we going to actually do this? And I'm feeling pretty solid on a number of things around what I want and need and require for this transition into separate lives.
Do you have
So,
them written down?
no, but that is a good idea. Yeah, and I think I need to really vision around it and everything and like make some art around it to get it into my subconscious, this like kind of power place that I want to get to. Because I do feel on a certain level, like when I first had kids, I'm like, I don't feel like a mom, you know. I'm just like a kid that had kids. I'm a teenager. But now I do. And that was like the horrible thing of like losing my mom, feeling like, well, I'm not, wait, now I'm in charge by default? Like the fuck? You know, like that don't make any sense. She earned her place and I'm just here. And so now I'm feeling a lot more like I've gone through a lot of shit. I've learned a lot. I've integrated a lot. I've done a lot of work on myself. And I'm still like on a lot of shaky ground, but I feel more powerful. I feel more standing upright instead of laying on my bed in a pool of tears. So,
Well, I think it's like also, I mean, sometimes, and who knows, maybe people listening are like, I don't care about astrology and like these alignments or whatever, but I do think even just in the seasonality of life, right? Like we go through like a lot of different kinds of themes come up at different times of the year. And so thinking about the ways in which you can put kind of like not the guardrails, but like the support stakes up around the stuff that you're dealing with to just make it a little bit easier. Like this is kind of like the
yes.
time of year, right, where you're turning the soil, you're like making sure you enrich it. Like this is the time that you want to be putting in the support elements that are going to position you for your next season of growth.
Yes.
Like I think when we go into a more introspective, reflective time, like you pull some of your energy back to yourself, you kind of like recharge. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like if you're going into kind of like the nuts and bolts of negotiation, mm-hmm. then some of the things you need are like as many support mechanisms as you can like have around you, like the visual representations of where you want your life to go, the like written list of like, these are the things I am not compromising on.
Right.
The little like mantra stickers everywhere, whatever, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And it's all, I think, like, honestly, in my heart of hearts, I don't know that I believe in astrology or in tarot. Even in like the color magic and all of that stuff. But in my heart of hearts, I believe in speaking to my subconscious and integrating ideas into it. I definitely believe that my frontal lobe is not in charge, and but I can utilize my frontal lobe in this way of being able to like maybe introduce some ideas or be able to concretely understand some of my body's ideas, so it's kind of like a back and forth communication between the two. It's like feeling your feelings, trying to understand what your body is trying to tell you with your lobe, your frontal one, and then also utilizing symbols and reflections upon different periods of time. Where was I 9 years ago? Where am I going to be 9 years from now? Moving forward and back through space in a way that feels and that is in tune with the universe and the strum of energy that's all around us. That I totally like, makes total sense to me, and that's what I try to do with all of these mystical type things and all the witchy shit. I think it is a way, it's like psychological and bodily, and I love it.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Okay. So everyone, please come, if you are in the LA area, come and see us on October 19th at the Eagle on Santa Monica Boulevard. We are collaborating with Cruise LA on a panel called Fucking Revolutionary about the intersection of sex work and queer liberation. Tickets are free. Go to circafestival.org to get your free tickets. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at fuckyeahpod. You can email us fyeahpod@gmail.com. And if you want to see video of the podcast, if
and
you
the puppy
want to get, you want to see, I think we've had both of our puppies actually now.
That's right. Yep.
On video. You got to go over and sign up on our Patreon, which is also Fuck Yeah Pod on Patreon.
Fuck yeah.
Talk to you soon. Fuck yeah.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Fiercely Independent Media. Fuck Yeah Podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by Robin Jennings and Sarah Tom Chesson, also known as my mom. Theme music by Suno AI. Your support means a lot. You can give to the show and receive perks at patreon.com/fuckyeahpod. You can also rate and review the show or share it with a friend. You can reach us at fyeahpod@gmail.com. Bye for now.